Boom. Hello, beautiful people. We are back at it. It's a happy Saturday. Hope you're having a great weekend. We are the Wrestling for Life Network. We are back at it again, talking the midway point of the XFL now. We're going to see which teams are starting to go up, which teams are starting to go down, who's making a playoff push. But we've got week 5 of the XFL. Bringing you the recap right now. Let's go. Boom. And like I said, folks, we are the Wrestling for Life Network. I am Big Nick here taking you through week 5 of the XFL. We're reaching the halfway point now of the season. So, like I said, we're going to be seeing who's making a playoff push, who's falling back. And honestly, we're just going to be talking some football. But happy Saturday, happy weekend. But like I said, we're kicking off with week 5 of the XFL. And the first game, now I know I talked about this a bit in week 4 because it did happen on Thursday. It was one of the odd, XFL trying out the Thursday night football like the NFL. But we had a big upset with the Seattle Sea Dragons beating the Houston Roughnecks 21-14. So now my team, the DC Defenders, are still the only undefeated team in the XFL because they beat the St. Louis Battlehawks 28-20 in game of the week, I would say. And it's been probably the best rivalry so far, especially since they're both in the same division between the Defenders and St. Louis. But then, speaking of games that happened this week, we had what I dubbed a bit the toilet bowl of the battle of the winless teams in the Vegas Vipers versus the Orlando Guardians. In Vegas picks up the win 35-32, showing that both teams just don't have a defense, I feel. And speaking of lacking one side of the ball, we had Arlington over San Antonio 12-10, showing that both teams don't have an offense, I feel, when it comes to that game. But I did also, because I know I've talked about the ratings and everything beforehand, and we're hitting records now, folks, when it comes to the XFL and ratings. So week 5 averaged 264,000 viewers, which is the lowest point of any version of the XFL. Now, granted, DC versus Seattle averaged 320. So again, people are paying attention still, even with March Madness and all of that, still paying attention a bit to the better end teams. But we have a new record, folks. We have a new champion has been crowned. The Vipers versus the Guardians averaged 234,000 viewers, the lowest viewership in XFL history from when Vince owned it to the 2020 version to 3.0 that we've got now. So how mightily they've fallen in 5 weeks. And granted, yes, they do have March Madness, but they're also going to be competing with the USFL starting next month, airing on Fox. So it's going to be interesting to see how the XFL maintains. Can they, I know I joked about it in week 1, but can they maintain, can they make it a full XFL season? Waits to be seen, folks. But speaking of performers, we've got the that was an awkward transition. But anyways, my offensive player of the week, and you might notice a trend with some of these folks, but Abram Smith, the DC Defenders running back, is my offensive player of the week. He had 218 yards on the day, 3 rushing touchdowns, 2 of which one was over 60 yards, the other was a 70-yard TD run, and now Smith leads the league in rushing with 432 yards, almost doubling the next person, which I believe is the Renegades running back at 255 yards on the season. And not to be outdone, though, the defensive player of the week, and it's the DC Defenders defense. Now, try and say that 5 times fast. The defensive player of the week is the DC Defenders defense. But they had 5 sacks in the single game against the Battlehawks, putting up the same number of sacks that the Battlehawks have on the season. So, a big impressive performance from the Defenders there. Like I said, putting up 5 sacks in one game. the same number of sacks that even the team they were playing has on the season. But let's take a look at these standings now, folks, as there's, like I said, we're starting to make our way for the playoff push. Like I said, we've reached the halfway point now of the season, of the 10-week season. But we have the Defenders, like I said, still the only undefeated team in the XFL at 5-0. And then second place in the North, we have the Battlehawks and the Sea Dragons are actually tied right now at 3-2. So the XFL North is starting to very much establish itself as the kind of murderer's row when it comes to divisions. And then we have the Vegas Vipers, who finally got a win. KJ, you can celebrate. They finally got a win at 1-4 at the bottom of the North Division. And then when we look at the XFL South, we have the Houston Roughnecks, who are undeniably running away with this division. 100% at 4-1. Like I said, it was a huge upset that Seattle beat them. So they're clearly running away with this division, as we've got the Arlington Renegades in second at 3-2, still trying to pretty much figure out what they are, who they are, what they're good at, what they're not good at. Apparently after this week, it seems offense. And that goes same with the San Antonio Brahmas in third place in the division at 1-4. And then bringing up the rear, as they have all season, the Orlando Guardians still at 0-5, and they take, I don't know when they're going to get a win. Honestly, could they be the first team in XFL history to go 0-10? We'll see. But so now it's time to get into my power rankings. And again, you can agree or disagree. You can let me know in the comments, whether you agree with my rankings, whether you're pulling for a certain team, anything like that. But at number 8, what's left to be said about them? The Orlando Guardians, like I said, they put up an offensive performance. It was, if you like to shoot out of a game, that game versus the Vipers was a shootout, but that's because there was no defense being played. I'm still waiting to see which team is the one that falls and gives the Guardians their first win. And it's something to be said about a team that's having to put in a backup quarterback that was accused of selling plays to opponents. So that just tells you the state that the Guardians are in. But then at number 7, we've got the Vegas Vipers inching them out because they picked up the win in the battle of the winless teams. And then at number 6, we've got the San Antonio Brahmas, which you could swap with them with the Arlington Renegades. I gave it to the Renegades because they picked up the win. But either of those teams, like I said, they're floating in the mist. They don't really know what they do, where they're going, who they are. Very much going to be middle of the pack. I don't really expect them to make a huge splash, but we could see, folks. We could see. We're still only at the halfway point. Pardon me. But at number 4, we've got, and now this is the farthest down that the Battlehawks have been. They're at number 4 for me. They're now 3-2. They've lost both times to DC. And as close as the score might have let you to believe that game was, it didn't seem like it was really all that close. I mean, caca is not the law. When you have the commentators even pointing out that Abram Smith's making Battlehawks defenders look silly, that was an actual call, folks. They're starting to kind of maybe fall back a bit. I know they before were the cardiac kids. They were pulling out every last second victory, but we got to see if they can maintain that, if they can really come out and step on some necks here. But at number 3, the Seattle Sea Dragons cracking the top 3. This was the team that I think start of week 1 on the recaps, they were number 7 in the power rankings, and now they're all the way up to number 3. I told you they were going to be a surprise breakout team when you've got Danuch and you've got Josh Gordon at wide receiver. That's a deadly combination. And they pulled off the big upset win over the Roughnecks. They're marching their way. They're making their statement that they're going to be a team to contend with when it comes playoff time. But at number 2 is the team that they beat. I know, how do you have a team that beat the other ahead of it, or that lost to the other team ahead of them? But they're 4-1. They still the fact that it was that much, it was considered an upset. You had their offensive coordinator doing his best Ken Dorsey impression of just throwing everything in their little booth at the stadium. That team is just still dominant, and I'm waiting to see a matchup that we're going to get in week 6 that I think is going to be game of the week, game of the season. They're going to be a tough out. They're really running away, like I said, with the XFL South. But number one team, if you couldn't have already guessed, it is the DC Defenders, still the undefeated team, the most dominant rushing attack in the XFL. They have the leading rusher. I think both of their quarterbacks. We have Derek King, who's now rushed for 4 touchdowns over 5 games. So, and you have Abram Smith and Jordan Tiamo, their starting quarterback and their starting running back, are both in the top 5 rushers in the league. This is a dominant rushing team. They have the best kind of ball hawk on the back end. Like I said, their defense put up 5 sacks in the game, averaging sack numbers that most teams have so far on the season. But I think they're running away, and I think they're stealing the hearts of everybody who tunes into the XFL and everybody in DC. Honestly, I think half the people are there just to protest Dan Snyder and the Commanders. But with that being said, folks, let's get into the week 6 action, as we do have games kicking off later today, actually. But so the week 6 games we're kicking it off with Seattle versus Orlando at 1 p.m. later today. If you're listening to this live on Saturday, they're kicking off at 1 p.m. on ABC again. XFL moving, shows to, or moving the games to a bit of the bigger networks. The 2 times, I believe it's 1 or 2 times that the XFL has been on ABC so far, the numbers have been much better, and they've got to compete with March Madness. But so we've got Seattle versus Orlando. I'm taking Seattle easily with this one. Like I said, I'm still waiting to see the day that the Orlando Guardians pick up a win, and Seattle is making a statement. I think they're going to firmly start to establish themselves as the number 2 team in the XFL North. But then we've got the St. Louis Battlehawks versus the Vegas Vipers, and that's kicking off at 7 p.m. tonight on FX. Still a surprising concept that we've got football games on FX, but I'm getting it makes sense. But again, this I think will be a nice win for St. Louis. This will get them hopefully back on the right track and get back to being one of the real standout teams in the XFL, especially when you've got AJ McCarron back there slanging it. And then on Sunday, we've got San Antonio versus Arlington. Again, it's one of those of you don't know what to make of these teams. I feel they just played last week, so it's going to be interesting to see that they're going to rematch themselves. Trust me, I literally was just checking myself to make sure that wasn't a typo or anything, because this game just happened last week. Now Arlington's going to be the home team, but I think we might get the same outcome, might get the same kind of stagnant offense, but we'll see. I think that's the first time I've seen it in organized football to where 2 teams have played each other back-to-back weeks. But I'm going to have to take Arlington with that one. It could go either way, but Arlington's at least shown already that they can beat them. But my highlight game of the week, of the season, if you like the XFL at all, 100%, tune into this game, because this is going to be the game to watch. And we've actually got Monday Night Football back again in the XFL. What? But we've got the Houston Roughnecks versus the DC Defenders kicking off at 7 p.m. on ESPN2. And I think this is going to be a preview of the XFL Championship, if I'm being honest. Like I said, this is going to be the 2 best teams in the league going at it on Monday night. And boy, howdy, do I like this matchup. And I might be trying to sneak this when we're here covering Monday Night Raw live, the go-home show for WrestleMania. And that's going to be an interesting thing, too, coming up here, is with Dwayne having connections to WWE, with the XFL having a history with WWE. How much advertising do we get for WrestleMania through these XFL games, because that might be a nice little touch, a nice little tie-in. But I think everybody knows who I'm taking in this game. I'm taking the DC Defenders, the team that just can't be beat, the team that's going to win the XFL championship. Why? But absolutely, folks, tune into that game 100%. Tune in to us. Absolutely. That to me is going to be the game of the season. That's going to be a preview of the XFL championship. Mark my words. But that does it for the XFL Week in Review. As I try and pull down the banner, there we go. Yes, so that does it, folks, for the XFL Week 5 in review and your little preview for XFL Week 6. Hope you're having a great weekend, 100%. We are the Wrestling for Life Network, the wrestling buddies you need in your life, your alternative commentary for anything and everything pro wrestling. The wrestling channel, the wrestlers tune into, the fans in attendance tune into. So absolutely be a friend, tell a friend, like, share, and subscribe. And I will catch you all on the flip side when we're here talking about XFL Week 6 and giving you a preview for Week 7. So stay safe. Happy Saturday. Peace.